Good morning, Diane. Member Ruff, Ian Boddy, good morning. My name is Joseph Bastine. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. So we have, MP Ruff, we have Ian Boddy, Diane Austin is on the line with us as well. I'm going to be your technical host, so I'll be in the background running things right now. You should see on your screen an OCNI please stand by slide. That's just our kind of placeholder. When the presentation begins, I will be dropping this slide in about 3 minutes, and then it'll be a shared screen amongst the 4 of you. And we're just waiting for, again, that one last participant. So I'm going to be muting your channel right now, and the channels will unmute at 10:30.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Your video feeds are great, by the way. Your audio sounds perfect.
Is Bill Walker going to be joining us?
I believe he is.
Super. Thank you.
Please stand by 1 minute. Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Joseph Bastine with the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries. I will be your technical liaison today for our teleconference on behalf of the Owen Sound Chamber of Commerce. Diane Austin is going to be our host today. Diane, I'm unmuting your channel right now if you want to say a few words. Diane, we can see you logged in. Are you able to speak? Okay, gentlemen, if you can just be with us 1 second. Thank you for your patience, Owen. We were just waiting for Dan to log out and log in one more time. If you can just hold for 1 minute, please. I just want to thank everybody for their patience while we wait for Dan to log back in. We'll provide an update as soon as we can. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Walker.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. I will let you gentlemen speak amongst yourself while we wait for Diane to join us. She's just logging back in.
Okay.
Geez, Bill, we thought you were going to miss it.
Well, I couldn't get on it originally. Some of
Or
the
Alex.
technology just doesn't work.
I just sent you a text saying, hey, are you coming? But you popped up.
I'll talk to you offline, Alex. We were having a conference call in regard to the Brent Robbins issue up in Tobermory.
Sounds good.
And I did try Rob Rouse, just so you know, and I've never got a call back. So we'll talk to him at some point, but I've reached out and I'm sure it's not anything urgent for today. So
No, it's not. I don't.
we all ready for this?
Yeah, it was nice to get a second set of questions this morning, wasn't it? But at least there was only one new one for you guys, not for me.
Gentlemen, just to let you know, this is an open channel, just in case.
I'm just deferring all my questions to you anyway, Ian, so it's not going to matter.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
Better refill my coffee.
I'll give the answers if you guys keep writing the checks.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Diane is having a little bit of an issue logging on, but we don't want to delay the presentations, and we want to thank everybody for your patience while we got everything up and running. Gentlemen, I don't know if you want to pick which one of you is going to speak first, but today we're speaking about the updates from the municipality of Owen Sound, the province, and the federal government on the response to COVID-19 and the supports available. So gentlemen, if amongst yourselves, Diane, thank you so much for joining us. Diane's audio is connecting right now. Diane, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You can see me now?
We can see you, we can hear you, you look wonderful.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I had to
No
switch
problem at all.
to my iPad because I don't have a camera on my old computer. Hi,
No problem.
Ian. Good. I just wanted to welcome everyone. We've had a lot of people register, which is nice. Just to let you know that what I'm going to do is if I ask all the participants, except for the panelists, to put their computers on mute. I do have a lot of questions that people have sent in, and I believe I sent them to all of you as well, just to so you can see them, and if you have any concerns or not put you on the spot. I'm excited that you agreed to do this. Thank you so much. I think it's important that we reach out and contact everyone in the community and let them know how hard all three of you have been working. I want to thank you so much for all your support and what you've been doing in the background. I don't think you hear that enough. So did you want to have anything to say before we start with the questions, Mayor Boddy?
You know, this has all come at us pretty quickly. Council really has only had one council meeting since it started. We had one just to approve the electronic meetings, and we've been pretty reactionary now. Now that we know that this is going to last longer, we're just starting to get to that point where we start to move forward and look down the road at how it's going to end. And we're going to have to do a lot of work to be ready, but that's now is looking forward. For the past, it's been just reactionary.
Are you there? Has he joined? Yeah. Hi.
Hey, Dan, thanks. I'll just say it's similar to the mayor. I mean, this has all been unprecedented. There's not a playbook for any of this. We certainly at the provincial level have tried to put everything through the lens of the medical officer of health and safety of the people of Ontario first. But I want, particularly as many people here are business people, to know that isn't without a lot of thought process given to the economics and the realities. We fully know that unless businesses are working and taxes are coming in, those supports everybody else is relying on are not going to be there. So it definitely has been a focal point. It will be a focal point. And as we all hopefully sooner than later start to turn our heads towards the recovery phase, as opposed to, as the mayor said, reactionary, a lot of things are going to start to move and a lot of things are going to be done in tandem, but they'll all be done through that health lens. They have to be through that health lens. It's again a double edge. You can't run too fast, because if you do and the pandemic comes back, we're no further ahead. In fact, we're probably further behind. And yet we know that people are getting anxious. People are very concerned, and we are trying to do that. As a result, Minister Phillips has been tasked with putting an economic recovery task force together, and that committee is already working to look at how we do this, how we stage it, and those type of things. So we'll continue to do our best as it emerges. Today, new modeling numbers will come out from the province, I believe, and that'll give us all better in-depth thought as to how we're going to move forward.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Ruff.
Yeah, thanks so much, Diane, for having us here this morning. The first comment I'd just like to make is actually a moment of sort of remembrance for the tragedy that occurred yesterday in Nova Scotia and Portapique, and countless lives, and in particular Constable Heidi Stevenson. Everybody, there's a lot of people putting their lives in danger right now due to this pandemic, but when you're dealing with this type of senseless violence, and when you have people unfortunately get killed, it's just my heart and prayers are with the province of Nova Scotia and all the families and friends directly impacted. So I just thought I'd bring that up first. As Mayor Boddy and Minister Walker brought up, this is interesting times, to say the least, and it's frustrating. I think it's frustrating for a lot of Canadians and a lot of businesses in particular, especially small businesses. So I'm just looking forward to the questions here because, I don't have answers to all of them. Unfortunately, unlike both the mayor and MPP Walker, they're sort of both in government right now. I'm in opposition, which makes it very frustrating to get the concerns that I hear every day from so many small businesses in particular across our riding and across all of Canada in particular, and to try to get those changes implemented. So I'll explain how I can do that to the best of my abilities, but rest assured, I know everybody's working hard to make the necessary changes so that we can come out of this and recover as quickly as possible, following the guidelines and directions of our health officials. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I can start, first of all, I want to also say thank you to OCNI, the webinars who set this up for me. They're amazing. Thank you, Allison and her team. I'm so happy to be able to do this. I'm going to start with the questions. And the first question I have is for Minister Walker. We are pleased that the 10th Street Bridge project is carrying on at this time. Can you assure us that this project will continue to be designated as an essential project? In fact, could it be accelerated now so that traffic congestion is less of an impediment to economic recovery in our area when that begins? I was going to also ask Mayor Boddy to add to that if he could as well.
I told Ian at the start I was just going to defer all of my questions to him, so I could do that now and just jump out of here. I can assure you that it definitely remains an essential service. Any of the road, transportation, bridge projects that were part of the infrastructure are remaining on the essential list and will do so. We know that this is critical to certainly in our backyard, Owen Sound and community, but across the province. All of these projects were priority and criteria were developed on that basis to start with. So this hasn't really, in my mind, changed anything. Diane, I'm not certain how I could comment on regard to expedited. I mean, to me, there's a construction schedule that has to be done with that construction company or companies. And again, with some of the challenges of workers and decreased workforces, I'm not really certain it's feasible to expedite. I would certainly leave that with the contractor and the city if they can do anything at a greater speed, but I can only guess that the mayor wants it done as quickly as possible to begin with. The contractor, the sooner they're out of there, they're on to job B. So I just don't know. There are certainly some things within the emergency orders, but I don't think, frankly, they're going to have much impact in this job because I think it was moving ahead on schedule with a time frame that everybody agreed to at the start.
Okay. Mayor Boddy?
Yeah, the Connecting Links program is in place. The money's there. Putting more money in wouldn't speed anything up. They're on schedule. They're moving ahead as best they can. We know with social distancing in the workplace that they're going to probably slow down a little bit here. But as far as I know, right now we're on schedule and they're going as fast as they can. We do have a report coming to council. Maybe next Monday. It might be after that, but we've got an update coming soon. But we're on schedule and there's no way of making them go faster.
And the projected completion of that is when?
It was
December?
I believe it's December, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This question is for you, Ian. Some Ontario municipalities like Collingwood are considering concessionary loans to key local businesses to help them survive. Does Owen Sound contemplate similar action?
Well, at this point, we haven't decided anything. Council are all, working in their own heads when we come together to try and figure out what we can do. There's a lot of challenges there. We will get a financial update at our next meeting next Monday, April 27th, and where the city's at. We know our revenues are down. We know that we're going to have cash flow challenges. We, at the last meeting, increased our line of credit to try and cover those cash flow things. So I'm not sure what our financial ability will be. However, we will be looking at what programs we're doing, what programs we can do, and trying to move ahead. This one is interesting. How do you identify key local businesses? And I don't know how you get into that. I'm not even sure that this is legal under bonusing, but we'll have a look at everything that is possible and figure out what we can afford and what we can do for sure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ruff. the federal wage subsidy program is not simple. It's direct or especially not timely, according to one of our members. How can you help to overcome these severe, frustrating limitations?
So as I sort of hinted at in the intro, that it is very frustrating. This is something we've been hearing from day one since the pandemic started. The government came out with a 10% wage subsidy program that we knew wasn't enough, and all the opposition parties, not just tied to the one I'm associated with, was identifying to the government it wasn't good enough. I was fortunate enough last weekend to be part of the selected few MPs to sit in Parliament to actually pass the legislation that allowed it to go up to 75%. However, it's still not implemented yet. It's still not out there. It's coming. That's what the government keeps telling us. So the best way I can do something about this is continue to gather the feedback, which I'm getting in spades from so many businesses across the riding. So email that into me, phone the office, make sure I have the data, and then I am pushing that up through our shadow ministers into the government. They get hounded every day from the rest of us with concrete solutions and best ways to do it. And when I answer one of the other questions, I'll talk about some other solutions and recommendations we've been pushing that I think would help businesses a lot faster and a lot more timely.
Okay, thank you. This one is for you as well, Alex. None of the federal governments help small single owner operated businesses. Will you deliver that message on how you can help them or what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. So for those, as I mentioned earlier, I was in the House. One of the questions that I asked it 3 times for those that were watching was to the Minister of Small Business about reducing or getting rid of the wage ceiling associated with the Canadian Emergency Business Account, or the $40,000 loan, because small businesses, sole proprietors do not qualify. One of the, as much as she didn't answer the question at all during the actual, when Parliament was sitting, once we finished sitting, the beauty of actually having the House sitting, I was able to, still respecting the physically distance health protocols, talk to her one-on-one. And lo and behold, I'm not saying I was directly responsible, but they lowered that ceiling from 50,000 to 20,000 this week. We're still calling for them to eliminate it, recognizing they still have to have some sort of checks and balances in place so that it's not just anybody that's incorporated, asking for this $40,000 loan, because $10,000 of it is forgivable if you pay it all back. So we have to make sure ultimately that it's not being abused either. And I recognize the government has that challenge, and I think that's why they put the ceiling in, but we recommended they could put a revenue link to it. So just because you're incorporated doesn't mean you get to apply for it, that there is actually better checks and balances than eliminating so many small businesses and sole proprietors. So I'll continue to take that message, as I mentioned earlier, to the government. I continue to feed that directly into the minister's office and through my shadow minister. But the best way to do it is for Parliament to actually reconvene more regularly, which there has been an agreement, I believe, or they're working on it right now. Parliament just is starting in about 10 minutes. And that's the motion on hand, is how often and how frequently is government going to sit at the federal level, which will allow all us MPs across the country to ensure the message is getting to the federal government loud and clear.
Okay, I am getting flashes of questions from people. If you want your question to be posed to the gentleman, can you email it to me, Diane@oschamber.com, and when we have time, I will definitely ask them those questions. I know that there's a few that have sent some, so just forward it to me if you can, and I will read those. Thank you. This next message is for Mayor Boddy, or question, sorry. Most local businesses work closely with the local bank or credit union. Can government assistance be delivered more quickly and effectively by utilizing these existing relationships? I'm not sure, Ian, if that should go to you or to Alex or Bill.
I think that would go to the others. As far as the city goes, you can pay your taxes through the banks at any time by going into the banks, paying online through the banks. But I think as far as delivering things, that's probably a better question for Bill or Alex.
And Bill, do you want to start first, and then we'll go to Alex? Thank you, Ian. Bill?
Muted. Oh, there we go. I was still muted. Yeah, I mean, all of these types of things, again, there's lots of administration technical things, but I can assure you that from the day one, what we wanted was something as simple and seamless as possible. I'll give you the example with us in the energy portfolio. We didn't even want to get into check writing and all of those type of things that were going to slow down things. We did it internally as quickly as we can. So I know from the finance perspective, they've been working with the banks and the credit unions to be able to do those things as much as possible to keep it as simple and seamless for people as absolutely possible.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Yeah, and I'll just add, this is exactly one of the other issues that was going on with the emergency business account. When the government initially announced it, it was only available through the big 6 banks. Then they opened it up to a select few of credit unions. But fortunately, this past week again, due to pressure, I think, from and just feedback from all the stakeholders, including a lot of the people listening today, that this doesn't work. You have to respect those existing financial relationships with the local credit unions and funding corporations, and fortunately now that is available, and everybody should be able to go to their primary lender that they normally deal with and qualify. One of the shortfalls, though, still with that program is a lot of small businesses don't use business accounts. They're using personal bank accounts, especially a lot of our agriculture and farmers. And right now, under the current guidelines and regulations, they don't qualify for. So that's something else we're pushing very hard with the government to change so that more people can actually qualify for this, just because when you're a small business, you don't necessarily have yourself set up as a business account, even though you are incorporated.
Diane, if I could, just before we go on as well, just that last point that Alex referred to in those small businesses, I want to assure people out there again at the provincial level, we're very aware. Lots of people have been giving me their concerns as well, which I pass through cabinet and particularly to finance. So in regard to some of those specific ones of self-proprietorship, there are processes that are being worked on to be able to try to address that. As you can imagine, with this type of a thing coming on, there are so many different things that have to be consulted, and yet we want to move things as quickly as possible. Most of them emanate at the federal level and then come back to us in concert with our colleagues, the finance minister talking to his federal colleague. And some of these, again, they want to get to the masses first, and you'll have seen 2 or 3 iterations coming out once they realize, oh, there's another pocket over here. How do we address that? And we don't want to do things haphazardly, so that there's actually a whole bunch of angst that we create after this is all over as well. So to those people, just be patient, keep funneling through to our offices those concerns, and we'll make sure we keep pushing them.
Thank you. Thank you. This one is actually Mayor Boddy. I've already asked that one. Sorry. This is for you, Bill. The retirement investment incomes of many local seniors have been decimated. Their diminished purchasing power will damage retail sales. What will you do to address this?
Well, I think it's not just senior. I mean, obviously there's a huge component of seniors that are going to be impacted, but I think everybody looking at any statements, if they had the luxury to be able to have investments out there in the same boat. So I think everyone, and it's kind of back to my first qualifying comment, everybody understands the economic impact that this is going to cause across all sectors of our world and our people that we have the privilege to serve. I think the sooner we can get back, the sooner we can get businesses back moving, that economy will start to uptick. You'll have seen the Premier, every time I see him speak, one of the things that I think is a positive coming out of this is there are a lot of businesses stepping up to the plate, becoming innovative, bringing new thought processes to the table. And I think, again, it's been a good wake-up call, frankly, for our economic reality of what we can do internally within Ontario, within Canada, to make sure we're self-sustaining in future. I think that's going to bode well as we come out of this in the recovery phase for businesses to actually say, what can we do? And the sooner we can get the economy moving again in that right direction, some of those economic indicators will start to pop back up. And I just think people have to be confident. We have to continue to know that we live in the greatest country in the world, and it will come back.
That's right. Mr. Ruff, other countries like UK and Australia provide quick cash grants, not loans, through simple, quick processes to businesses suffering from COVID-19. Is Canada doing that? And if they aren't, why not?
Well, so before I even jump onto that one, I just wanted to elaborate a bit on the previous question too, with that went to Bill. Because the federal government has brought in that for seniors in particular, because of that you know, the losses in their investments and their savings, that next year that there's a 25% reduction for those that have to take RIFs out and take that they won't have to, which again will allow them longer time to ensure that they're not taking a loss on those savings and those investments. We're actually advocating that goes to 100%, that just waive it for next year, that any seniors, if they don't have to take that money out, let them keep it in their investments, so that they're not losing the value of it going forward. We'll see if the government accepts that recommendation going forward, but that's just something else we're advocating hard for the seniors to help protect those limited savings that some of them have. Your next question, it's a great one. Unfortunately, you know, I don't know why the government's not looking at it that way. It's ultimately the federal government's needs to come up with something that's a bit better and look at other countries that are successfully implementing some of these grants, vice loans that are out there. One of the things that we've proposed that if the government I think would help so many businesses, is instead of and put cash in their hands immediately, because it's already set up that way, is provide the remittance for the last 6 to 12 months of their GST HST submissions. Just give them that cash back. That's something that CRA could do, you know, from my understanding, with a couple keystrokes, and then that money would flow back to all the businesses that have been submitting, you know, that GST HST, and whether that's completely forgivable or how you do that's a question, you know, can be debated, but at least you could flow that money right back and get that money back into the hands and give that cash flow and liquidity back to small businesses across the country.
Okay,
Can I just jump in there?
you can.
I just think we have to be pragmatic in our approach, though. When people talk about grants, let's not forget every one of those dollars is being borrowed. So the more we borrow, and let's, you know, I can't let go. It's the thing that for my 8 years has kept me up the most. The money we spent on interest payments before we ever get into coronavirus, were not money that was going to the front line to be able to help people, whether it be seniors, businesses, single families, whoever that may be. So when you're thinking grants, we have to manage the expectation of reality, and that comes back again, it either is coming from taxation or it's coming from debt. And both of those, you, I, and every person on this call is going to pay into that. So there are realities of what we can do. There's also realities of how much, frankly, as a province, because of the debt situation we inherited, how much we actually will be able to borrow. So we just have to I think, monitor and manage that expectation level of hearing grants is a wonderful thing, but there isn't a money tree out in the backyard. Somebody at some point, and that just prolongs how much money can go into some of the things that we do want to be doing if it's all grant money.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is for Mayor Boddy. Retirement and nursing homes and LTCs are an important and growing component of the local economy. They employ and serve many community residents. Do you agree that they deserve better government oversight and enforcement for both public health and business reasons? If you other gentlemen would like to speak on that as well, by all means. Ian?
Yeah, my only knowledge of long-term care homes, frankly, is the 3 that the county runs. We very recently asked Jennifer Connolly, who is managing them, about the press stating that they weren't being inspected the same way as they had been in the past. She indicated that yes, there is lots of inspections from the provincial government. They're coming into long-term care homes all the time. One of the things with this COVID, frankly, is some of the older homes that will have 4 or more people in a room. The provincial government is pushing all of the long-term care homes to go to an A category. There's funding available. We know that we've got a building going up pretty soon here in Owen Sound, as well as others throughout the county. That will help get down to more single and double rooms, which would stop the spread. So I really don't know if more supervision or more inspections would help, but I know there's a lot more inspections than what media is representing right now. And we haven't had anything going on at the Grey County building so far with regard to COVID. They are daily checking the temperatures of all the people that are there. Screening them, putting it through, checking staff, screening them, put them through. So I think all the long-term care homes are. I know from talking to Dr. Era the other day that hospital staff, health unit, everyone is working with long-term care homes. They're all working together as a group, and the privately run retirement homes. They're all working to make sure that they've got the equipment that they need, got the staff that they need, the information that they need. And in this area, they're all working together very well. But as far as further studies go or inspections, I don't really have a better answer.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
And, yeah, may I please? And Mayor Boddy raised a really valid point. I was critic of long-term care and seniors for 2.5 years. Just the word inspection by its very nature doesn't mean it's going to be better or that it's efficient. What we were really hearing, and I spoke in opposition to many of the operators who were saying, it's like you in business. If you have 5 audits instead of 1, does that mean that you're a better business or not? Or do you just focus a lot more energy on things that actually aren't at the front line to your customer? What they were telling us again is it was drawing valuable staff members away from actually frontline care to the residents, as opposed to running around for another audit. So what we tried to find was a balance. Absolutely, inspections are critical. We need to do that. It was also changing a bit of the culture. Rather than coming in and that gotcha, we're going to find you mentality, is how do we come in and actually help you improve so you are in compliance? If I can say this, and I hope people will take it with the intent I mean, if there can be a positive coming out of COVID-19, I think one of the things is there's been a huge spotlight that is glaring on our long-term care facilities and how we've done them. They've been underfunded for a long time. Again, the challenge becomes when you're in a debt and deficit situation, how do you immediately reverse that? And that's not going to be any easier in COVID situations than it was prior to COVID. So I think the good thing is right to the top of the premier is understanding that there are a lot of things in long-term care that need to be revisited in how we do business. And I think there's going to be a lot of good things come out of this situation, sadly. And again, to all the families that are having a loved one who they've lost or is in a challenging situation, our heart goes out to them. But I do believe the focus is there, and that will result in long-term improvements to the long-term care and retirement facilities, as the mayor mentioned.
Right. Alex, anything to add? Alex, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm there. I wasn't able to take myself off mute. The host there had to unmute me. No, I actually have nothing to add on that side at all. It really did. There's minimal impact from the federal government with respect to long-term care governance.
Okay, thank you. This next question is actually for Minister Walker, and Mayor Boddy wants to add something as well to this. It seems that most public servants continue to be fully paid, even though many, like teachers, are not working full time. How is that fair to private sector employees and employers whose incomes have been reduced or eliminated and whose taxes pay for those jobs? Bill, do you want to answer first?
Absolutely. So my understanding and expectation, frankly, is that anybody who's drawing a wage from the public sector, from the Ontario government, is actually working. There are a lot of things that have been put in place, and this again is probably a good light shining on something that we have the ability. Today we're Zooming. I'm actually working from my kitchen table. So to those who think that I don't work a whole lot, I am actually able to work, and we are connected through. So all of the public sector, from my perspective, is at home. I did a Skype call or Zoom call again on Friday afternoon in regard to the piping plovers in Sauble Beach, for example. And I know an email went out at 8:42 to the mayor authorizing them to do some maintenance on the beach, which was part of the conversation we had. So I did frankly push that. Originally it was going to wait till Monday. I said, no, in these times, any times, frankly, we should be working more effectively when we have that ability from home. Work did get done, and I applaud the ministry officials who did that. I think the town was quite pleased. So that's just an example, but anybody who has the ability and is getting a paycheck should definitely be working as much as they can. And I truly believe they are.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Yeah, our staff are working from home as well on the things that we have to do. You know, we have to keep water going. We have to keep wastewater going. We have to keep garbage picked up. Those essential services. Right now, we've got facilities that are closed, parks that are closed, and in fact, the city has given notice in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement to approximately 40 employees layoff notices. On top of that, there will be approximately 20 seasonal and summer students that will not be called in at this time. It was a pretty tough decision to make. You will see parks getting the grass getting a little bit long. Some of the buildings and properties are not going to be cared for to the standard that we've been accustomed to. So when you see it, you'll know why. But we have tried to cut some of our costs by giving those notices. And we will have, as I think I said already, a financial update coming next week to our council meeting of where we're at. We've lost a lot of revenues and we're trying to figure out how to manage the costs. So there has been layoffs at the city. At the county, there won't be likely any layoffs. They're providing transportation. Certainly social services and housing, et cetera, probably have increased their load. So their positions are a little bit different. There isn't anybody without something to do right now. So it's less likely that there would be a layoff at the county. They're still working and working hard.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, can I just add one thing before we move on?
Yes, you can.
And I'll say this probably on behalf of all three of us, in regard to our staff. So in my case, we've shut the office to the public. A couple of my staff are trying to come in just because they have more access to a lot of the technology. Other staff are working from home. We are fully open and open for business as we were in the past. In fact, probably I want to give credit to all of our staff who are working much longer hours than my staff always work more than they get paid, and I'm sure Alex's and the mayor's do as well. But just a huge shout out to them that sometimes get forgotten in all of this. They're taking the front line. They're still taking the bulk of the calls and the emails, and they're working day and night to serve wherever they can. So thank you to all of those people, not just in ours, but across all of the county, as the mayor has said, or the counties.
Actually, I want to say that as well. Anytime that I've called any of your offices, they have been so helpful. And if they don't have the answer, they have it, they get it almost immediately. So thank you. You all have amazing staff.
We're very fortunate.
Yes, you are. I'm going to ask this one question. It's for Mr. Ruff. And then I've got a lot of questions that I've received by email that some of them are pretty good. So I'm just going to jump to those and ask a few of those as well. So this one, Alex, do you envision that public sector defined benefit pensions will remain fully paid and indexed even though these plans are now actuarially unsound? Or is it up to taxpayers to make up the difference from their depleted pocketbooks, as has been the practice?
I wish I could answer that question, but I really have no clue. That's just it's a tough question. I don't know. I don't have access to the government books right now to understand just how bad we are. As the question, whoever posed the question, about whether or not I can take that at faith that they are actually unsound or not. So I can't really answer that aspect at all. But before we jump on, I just want to go back to the point, and Bill did a great job of summarizing. Thanks to the staff, because I know my staff. I have 2 part-time employees that are working full-time hours right now, and I'm just hoping this doesn't carry on a whole lot longer, because in the end, the way the budgets work for members of federal parliament, we run like a small business. I have to manage my own budget, so if I go over budget, it comes out of my own pocket. So I got to manage my employees' wages very closely too, because that's just the way it works, like any small business. But right now everybody's working full time just to try to answer all the questions and concerns that are coming in from people. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know enough about the pensions benefits, or not benefits, but how they're actually put together. I will dig into that to find out if there's legitimate concerns, and I'll definitely talk to our shadow minister of finance to find out what the issues are on that side.
And you could post that if you could for that question. Thank you. Thank you. I do have a question. This is for Mr. Walker. It was just emailed to me this morning, so bear with me. It is a little long. It said, do condo boards have the authority to freeze special assessment payments and reserve funding study top-up payments? I have asked this question several weeks back, and along with the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, and cannot get anyone to get back to me on this. We have a devastating amount going out monthly, and our board, who mainly do not live in the building, don't care and keep forcing us to make these payments. Does the board have the authority to freeze them, and can this be forced to make them stop these payments? I know that was long, so Bill?
Yeah, so again, I don't have a definitive yes or no, because I'd have to look into that. I do know there is the condo authority that is through the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. So Minister Thompson would be best able. I will definitely take that to her. Again, I hope people will appreciate every single thing that is going to come up on here has to be thought through, and what's the ramification, what's the reality. There could be legislation again that prohibits it currently that would have to be changed, and there's a lot of those. I forget how many emergency orders we as a cabinet have approved. All of those have to go through a process. They have to be vetted. They have to be researched. So that type of one, and whoever's saying they haven't got a response, it could be because it's still working its way through the system from a legality of what can you do. But I trust that that act will either prohibit it currently and it'll have to be changed, or there won't be value. But and I don't know if they've sent me one to my office, but if they send that through as a specific, we'll go and address that with Minister Thompson.
Okay, thank you. This
Diane,
one, yes.
Diane, if I can just speak to that, I would encourage that person to go and contact their condominium lawyer. There might be other answers there within the structure the way it is right now without changing it.
Okay, thank you. This one is actually, I believe, for you, Ian. We are grateful for the local supports being provided for seniors in food banks. What is earmarked for our community members with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as they are particularly vulnerable? Many of the families the Reach Center supports are in crisis during this period of social isolation. Is this for you or is it for Bill?
But one, I will kick off just that the county social services are taking funds that are extra funds that are flowing through basically from the upper tier governments and helping different groups, different social groups as best they can. So there is a flow through from the county. They are looking at those things and doing the best they can. You know, example is OSHARE that was doing 400 to 500 meals a week, or up to about 1,600, and that will probably increase yet. So absolutely everybody, all the charities are not getting the funding that they normally would get from donations. You know, people aren't making those donations, but their day-to-day activities are going on. So there's a squeeze for everybody, but I know the county's doing everything they can with the funds that they're getting.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in as well, Dan. So the province of Ontario did do a $200 million fund to go out specifically to social services, and to echo what Mayor Boddy said, some of that money, I talked to both to OSHARE and to Reach specifically, suggested they reach out to the county and see if there's a way to get a little bit of that funding. And again, across all of the sector, there's certainly been provisions made. I know specific to the community living sector, if you will, Minister Smith is working very diligently there, and I've heard good feedback from some of our locals. Dr. Era is doing a great job to centralize some of those needs in regard to PPE and ordering and making sure they're taken care of from that perspective. And I just read in the Sun-Times, I think last night, I was trying to catch up on some reading. Two companies actually gave fairly significant, the Egg Farmers of Ontario, and there were a couple of private companies, I can't recall their names, but you know, we had an affiliation of someone who lived here or had a cottage here. Both OSHARE and the food banks were certainly beneficiaries of that. So a huge shout out to those groups and to anyone. I know there's probably numerous ones that I haven't even heard of yet that are donating surplus food and those type of things to local communities across the province. So to all those companies and businesses, thank you so much. And definitely those agencies are absolutely critical. 211 and the Great British United Way are doing great work out there again to coordinate some of that thing, those types of things and services. So to all, everybody is focused on that perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, I just like to add in there, just based on knowing that we have so many businesses that are, you know, a lot of them struggling, but some may have the connections. Having had a good long conversation with both the Great Bruce Poverty Task Force and the United Way lead there last week, they are still looking for, you know, they're being challenged on their food procurement side of the house due to the restrictions and how can they get access to more food. Because so if there's anything, there's a business out there that's somehow related that can facilitate or help them out that way, please reach out to those respective organizations. They're just looking for ways that they can sort of secure their that access to enough food of all sorts that they need to in order to do it, because the demand is definitely up since this pandemic. And so anything we can do just by you know, word of mouth and getting out there that can help facilitate what they need would be great. And the other challenge that they put out there, and I'll use this forum to get it out, is volunteers. They have a lot of volunteers, but their words are their average age of their volunteers is 75 to 85. well, those are the people most susceptible to the COVID-19. They do need some younger volunteers out there in order to maintain this, especially, you know, if the pandemic doesn't start ramping down soon, and they need to maintain sort of that tempo for a while yet. So I just thought I'd offer that out there as well.
Okay. One of the things I've seen is that some facilities that do have volunteers, they're not letting them in. If there are some organizations out there that are allowing volunteers, maybe they should get it out to us so we could just get it out there to people. Okay, thank you. Thank you. There's another one that I just received. It is, we all have significant personal and business concerns. However, the foundational strength of our communities rests on of our social and community organizations to meet the needs. These charitable and community groups need our support now more than ever. I guess this is more of a statement. In light of a much reduced financial position, our citizens need to reach out and help. One of the questions is, provide a much higher federal tax credit. I'm wondering if that's a possibility for 2020.
Yeah, so that's something I know us in opposition have been calling for the federal government to implement. We've asked that question to them: is up that limit, considerably, for charitable organizations that you do get that tax credit, because I've got that from local businesses that maybe are doing all right still or have done well enough, and they're very giving, kind, sympathetic people and organizations, and they want to give more. And so they've asked that question as well. So I've pushed that up there, and hopefully the federal government will take that into consideration and implement sooner than later, because I think that would definitely help out so much to so many of these important charitable and community organizations.
Okay, one of the other suggestions, Alex, that they said is consider a matching program, either equal to what citizens give or perhaps multiples. A consideration or a thought?
Yeah, I think that is something that can be done, but it goes back to Bill's earlier comment. If the money's coming out, we're all paying it back somehow down the road, right? So in the end, it is a way to do it. Would definitely increase to get that money into those organizations that are helping them, those that most in need, is sooner than later. However, that aspect would definitely have a so what to it, that of where's that money coming from, but definitely pass that on as well. And I'm glad it's a valid recommendation.
Okay, thank you. This one is for Mayor Boddy. Is there a possibility of opening up public boat launches to allow some sort of recreation, maybe someone there to monitor social distancing?
Well, we followed the direction of Dr. Era, who looked at it. Once people are out on the water, if they're by themselves or with their family, it's the same as being at home, and he very much encourages recreation use. However, we're worried about people congregating at the boat launches, number one, and number two, there's a concern about attracting people from across the province that start coming up and bringing whatever they've got with them and spreading it in our community. So at this time, if you can find a way to get your boat into the water, go ahead. I do know that if you go to publichealthgraybruce.com, there's something in there about fishing on along the river banks and along the harbor front. As long as you're socially distancing, you can do that. But the boat launches are not likely to be opened unless there's a change from the provincial government.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. We have seasonal small businesses, and our employees are still on EI. If we bring our employees back and put them on payroll, and we complete our 6 to 8 weeks of agricultural work, and those restrictions stay the same as they are now, what is the best way to deal with our employees? Especially if we have lots of residential work lined up, but we won't be able to proceed with that. I'm really not sure. I think I actually have this question. I wanted to ask you, Ian, I really don't know what they mean by that. Do you?
Sorry?
I'm going to ask this next question. We'll go back to that one. This is for you, Ian. As a commercial landlord in Owen Sound, I have waived the rents for my commercial tenants until they are able to reopen. If I had just thrown them out for non-payment, I could have then claimed the 30% vacancy tax credit. Could the city extend that rebate to compensate landlords like myself who are working with their tenants?
Well, first of all, the vacancy rebate program is set by the province, and it's very defined criteria. So giving the city doesn't really have the ability to give the rebate for people that have tenants in there that they're not collecting from. It would be very difficult for us to change that. We are going to look at everything we possibly can again with regard to what we can do to help businesses. At the city, the provincial government changed sort of the regulations, and we can remove that vacancy rebate currently. We decided that we would not review that until after the 10th Street Bridge comes out or comes back in. So right now the vacancy rebate is in place. Again, we can't spread it without there being changes by provincial legislation. It's possible that, well, it's in place, so it's not likely that we'll look at it before the 10th Street Bridge goes back in.
Okay, thank you.
Alex may have something on that, because I know the federal government just, I think they've got a commercial rent assistance program that was been announced, if I'm not mistaken. Alex, do you know?
No, you know, that did come up last week. The Prime Minister did make the announcement, but no details have been provided yet, and it requires working with the provinces, and it's complicated because you know, as much as they could work it out with one province, every province is slightly different. So there's a lot of legalities and work that needs to be done. So the federal government, Prime Minister made that announcement that they are working on something both for mortgages and for rent. However, none of the details have been released yet that I've seen.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to skip down a few questions because we are running out of time. This is for Minister Walker. Can anyone tell me how the government, question number 16. Can anyone tell me how the government decided who is essential or not? A car dealer can sell cars and fix them doing self-distancing. I have a trailer dealership and I can't sell trailers, fix them, or sell parts. I watched the other day, apparently there was 4 guys putting up a fence. Did the fence really need to go up? Also, if the food and pharmacy is only 10% of a store, if they're open, I'm sorry, if the food and pharmacy places are doing takeout, also if the food and pharmacy in a large store like Walmart, why aren't they only open that part of the store and the rest of it closed? I'm thinking this needs to be looked at, and when can families get together was another question as part of that. But do you have an answer, Bill?
Well, I do, but I can assure you there was a committee set up, very challenging, lots of thought process went into it. We definitely fed into it and asked similar questions sometimes to what you were doing. Many businesses were part of a supply chain. That was the whole crucial part. It might be a small little company supplying another company, supplying another. In those specific references, again, the idea was to really get the main message out that as much as we could, we had to get people to stop moving around and spreading this virus. Whether your interpretation of essential and mine were the same, or the committee, lots of thought process there. But what I can assure you, the intent was to first and foremost put health and safety ahead. In the example of the fence being built, it was on a complaints basis. So that company could have gone ahead and said, we're doing this and we're going to take our chances. Other companies said, we're not going to do that. There could have been a reason, maybe to contain a pet, maybe something that had to happen that I can't comment on, obviously, because of the specifics. But I can assure you that it was done with the intent. If we don't flatten the curve, everybody is going to suffer more longer and in a more severe way. I can share with you again, I believe today there are going to be new modeling numbers come out. And if that is indicating some positives, we'll reassess that list. There are definitely going to be the odd business or some businesses on there that won't agree, that are definitely going to have suffered some hardship as a result. But the whole intent, and it came from, by the way, the Chief Medical Officer for the province of Ontario. So everything we're doing is going through that filter to ensure, is this really helping the majority of people across Ontario. So we will continue to readdress that as the numbers start to change, and hopefully let's all be positive and hope that they've actually, because of the bulk of people respecting and adhering to those compliance requirements, the curve will have flattened and we can start looking at different. I think the mayor said again, things seasonal are starting to change. We're starting to get the grass growing. So something as simple as landscaping is going to have a different thing. Did they have to be out a week and a half or 2 weeks ago? No, but in the next couple of weeks that may change. So we'll continue to address that as cabinet. We'll try to do this wherever we can. And again, I don't want it to be lost. Health is absolutely the priority of the government. But we know how impactful the economy is going to be in regard to coming out of this thing from a recovery perspective. And we'll do as much as we can in a practical, manageable manner, again, respecting always health and safety and the medical officer of health.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask one last question, unfortunately. This is for all three of you. Do you have a vision on when the area will start to open up for small businesses? Do you have any idea? Ian?
Well, I'll start in and just say, as I just said, you know, I haven't seen these numbers yet. Typically, cabinet, we get a quick look, and we may get that before they come on at 1 o'clock. If they're showing improvement, if the medical officer of health is convinced that, again, we've flattened that curve and there are areas, I can assure you that even discussions going on in regard to an urban versus a rural area, because there's a lot less impact and a lot less contact. Do we do it in a phased manner? Once we see those numbers, once we have that consultation with the chief medical officer of health, we'll make determinations of what businesses. I know, and I certainly, I think for all three of us, we respect people are getting antsy, particularly those businesses that every day are not bringing in revenues, but their expenses continue. We empathize with them, we understand it, but we're trying to manage it for the greater good and ensure that when it is safe. Because if we do a knee jerk and come back too fast and the curve fires back up, we're gonna have to go right back and maybe be even more stringent. So it's doing everything in balance and appreciating. I don't certainly have a crystal ball of when, but I'm hopeful that sooner than later.
Good, great. Ian?
Well, I would just say to everybody, we don't know when it's going to start. I suspect there's going to be some lag in disposable income once people do go back to work, because they're paying off their debts that they're accumulating right now. I encourage anybody in business to be ready. You know, we've all started our own businesses. We had to go through a business plan at that time. We're going to be starting over. And if we think about taking this time, getting really ready that we can hit the ground running, pretend that you're not going to get any support from any government level because you don't know what it is, you can't count on it. Be ready to go, do some thinking, work with your employees, work with your neighbors, everybody in business, and try and come up with some good ideas so you're really ready to go when that moment comes and be able to go strong. But we don't know when that's going to be.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Yeah, so the first bit that I'll just tackle, because I know there was a couple other quick questions that I think I can answer quickly. Margot had asked about the CERB, and if your employees go back to work, the government has changed it, so you're allowed to work up to $1,000 or make $1,000 a month and still actually qualify for that benefit. I don't know if it answers your question completely. And for Heinen, I think if I'm pronouncing his name, asked about RuralNet and for subsidized internet. Please reach out to your concerns directly to my office and Bill's office, because there is implications there with the SWIFT program, I think. Maybe not, but they're under the provincial, but there is with the Connecting Families Initiative. I'll see if I can do something. I can't promise anything, but I'll reach out to the federal government. To go back to your original question, ultimately, we don't know until we get that information, and part of that's key is the testing. I know the province is working hard, as is the federal government, to increase testing capacity across the country. Once we have that level of fidelity and that data, that will allow a lot more the medical expertise to make sound recommendations to the governments to here's where you can, accept greater risk or not, or manage this, because they'll understand it better. So I think testing's absolutely key in order to help determine how quickly we can get back on that road of recovery or start opening things back up. And finally, I just offer words of optimism, I guess, is we are in a much better position than so many countries around the world. I mean, there are other countries taking some measures that I think we should be adopting too as a nation, but we are so fortunate to live in Canada and to be in this situation compared to other nations. So I just continue to tell people, we'll get through this. I've been around the globe a few times, and we are so much better off in Canada than so many other places. So just, you know, take a little bit of hope and optimism in that.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a lot of questions I didn't get around to asking. So I'm wondering if you three would actually do this again at another time so we can possibly complete the questions. Because I think all of them, even the ones that were just emailed to me today, they're important. And I know people want answers. So I would like to set this up again in the very near future if I can.
Sure.
Do this.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say now that I can send these questions to you, and if you want to answer them privately, or we can do an OCN, we'll talk about that. So
Sure.
I want to thank you all very much for joining. It's been very informative, and I greatly appreciate you talking and answering these questions. And best of luck to all of you. I know it's a busy time and a terrible time for all of us. So thank you again.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks, OCNI, and to all the listeners out there. As Alex said, we will get through this. Just keep adhering and being compliant, and we will get through this as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Take care.
Yeah.
And I echo Bill. Yeah, great work, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today for our call. My name is Joseph Bastien. This video will be available very shortly. Please keep an eye out for the next meeting hosted by OCNI and the Owen Sound Chamber of Commerce. Have a great day. Stay home, stay safe.